Exclusive footage directly from the battlefield. What a massacre. The new Russian offensive took a sharp turn. A painful ambush for the occupiers, full-scale meat assaults. Our forces destroy the enemy without mercy and without pause. The Russian fleet is rotting at the bottom of the sea. What else have the Ukrainian armed forces prepared for the invaders as a dessert? All this in our episode Hellpoint. Kramatorsk resort for occupiers, all-inclusive with a mortar flavor. Precise strikes directly on positions. Russian infantry drops everything and flees at full speed. Bonus hits catch up with the cowards. Between their work, the Ukrainian armed forces manage to crack jokes. However, they assure that the invaders will definitely not find it funny. The real hell is just beginning. Unique footage of our defenders' work is already online. Watch it yourself.
It's cool when you shoot and everything over there is burning. It burns. Like that. I like it.
People are bustling around and it's burning. And I'm bursting with laughter.
Yes, jokingly, the mortar men of the 5th Separate Assault Kiev Brigade, who are defending the approaches to Kramatorsk, talk about their work.
The greenery has turned green. The enemy is advancing, pushing, trying, entering in small groups of 1 or 2 people. Well, but our guys are working, and we are working too. Our drones, well, they detect them, and accordingly we work on them.
The situation is like in a war. I don't know. They advance, we destroy them. They also show some teeth to force some kind of lousy peace, to win something, anything, somewhere. They advance tactically, but it's one-sided.
In some places, the occupiers are bringing in armor. Recently, enemy forces launched a massive offensive. The result of their assault is visible on the screen. The remains of Russian equipment litter the Ukrainian land, but the Russians retaliate and destroy our cities from a distance with shelling.
Constant shelling, especially now. I say they have started shelling Kostiantynivka heavily with everything, including rockets and who knows what else, really intensely. And also in Kramatorsk and Drushkivka everywhere.
The task of the Ukrainian mortar teams is to protect the infantry, and the mortar teams themselves are covered by aerial reconnaissance.
I like it when they tell me there's a hit, everything's good. Guys, great, let's solidify the result. Let's send a couple more there.
We're giving them a good scare. Sometimes they praise us, sometimes a little less.
Besides the ability to work quickly, these guys need physical strength to carry parts of the mortar. Just one base plate weighs 90 kilograms.
I've already learned what muscle soreness is. Running, throwing, aiming. They tried to land a Mavic on me. They scared me in the mortar pit. I ran around a bit, hid, yes. There were shellings, there were... Hey, but it's all bearable.
Mortar crews always have work to do. They have a plan for the targets they work on. These are enemy fortifications and positions. And when they know they are working against the infantry of the occupiers who are going on the assault, they give it their all.
Then we don't spare them. No mines, nothing.
A mortar shell, an 82 millimeter shell is light. Well, 3 to 3.5, up to 3.5 kilograms, up to 4. Well, quickly there from a box, well, under normal operation, you can throw out these 10 pieces in 2 minutes.
10 pieces in 2 minutes?
Yes, you can do that, when the work is intense.
When the mortar operators receive information from the scouts about the location of enemy positions, they calculate from where they can strike them. They work as quickly as possible.
There were times when we just ran out of the dugout and immediately the mortars started firing at us because they knew where our position was. And well, thank God everyone managed, the guys managed to jump into the dugout. We managed to jump into the vehicle and quickly drive away.
The warriors say that despite the fatigue, they will continue to fight the enemy because they know our infantrymen need help.
The smell of gunpowder, the joy of work gives. And you understand that you are not doing all this in vain.
From Donetsk, Marina Smolova, Alexander Petrovsky, United News.
The Russian fleet is in the crosshairs. Crews are in panic leaving the ships and Moscow is powerless. The invincible flotilla turned out to be easy prey for the armed forces of Ukraine. The Black Sea is taking one by one the ships of the occupiers in Crimea. The Russians attribute mysticism to this. However, no, this is Ukraine's revenge. How ultimately is it possible to terrorize the Russian fleet, or rather to extract its remnants? More on this in just a moment.
The Russian cruiser Moskva and the landing ship Caesar Kunikov. And this is the missile boat Ivanovets. This is how precisely, step by step, the defense forces destroy enemy ships. In this naval battle, we have already accounted for over 24 vessels that will never be able to enter the Ukrainian Black Sea again.
As of this morning, there were no known ships in the Black Sea waters. In the Sea of Azov, we have not observed any since last year, when several attacks were carried out from our side. The Russians directly considered there to be a danger, and they, for example, withdrew even beyond the Semez Bay, 5 carriers of cruise missiles.
Our cruise missiles and naval drones have become too dangerous for the Russian fleet. Because of this, the ships that Russia still has were hastily withdrawn by the enemy from occupied Crimea and the Sea of Azov. They are now based in Novorossiysk.
Submarines and frigates and missile boats, carriers of caliber missiles. This is the main strike force of the Russians, and it is precisely there. And the landing ships, by the way, are mostly all there. The deployment of these ships, well, to the sea, can last for a short time. That is, they went out within an hour, they deployed in the combat training area, launched missiles, and returned back.
Destroyed and damaged Russian ships remained in occupied Crimea. There is a repair base there that services the enemy fleet.
In Sevastopol, there are several large landing ships that we damaged, including the Olenigorsky Gornyak. The Minsk is there, and there are also the so-called water area protection ships. That is, these are missile boats, minesweepers, small missile ships, anti-submarine corvettes to protect the base point.
Cotton destroyed Russian military logistics, and then our forces also destroyed oil products in Feodosia and Sevastopol. All this has reduced the combat capability of the Russian army. In almost 3 years of full-scale war, the Russian Black Sea Fleet has lost 30% of its combat potential.
A third of the ships have been completely disabled. And at the beginning, there were about 8 combat units. A third is effectively already out of action. But an even greater number of ships have sustained damage. The frigates Makarov and Esmina have sustained damage. Among the patrol ships, of which there are only 4 in total, only 1 has not been damaged. The last one was Pavel Dazavin, which sustained 2 damages in 2 days.
Russia typically conceals strikes on its facilities and denies losses. But they are so extensive that they cannot be overlooked. This has also affected the families of Russians who were brought to Crimea to serve in the fleet. Now they have returned to Russia again, as there is practically no occupying fleet left on the peninsula. Elvina Saitbulaeva, We Ukraine Marathon. Unified News.
Now, even more horror and fear. The legendary Baba Yaga is cutting down the occupiers with renewed strength. Roaring like a nightmare, dropping gifts from the sky and driving Russians out of the trenches. In this mission, there is true pride in our Titans. Every sortie is a bundle of achievements. Putin's army generals no longer know what to do. Why is even the elite assault infantry of the Russian Federation afraid of this bird? We'll tell you in just a moment.
From the box, the pilot crew retrieves a giant drone. This is the Vampire, one of the largest unmanned aerial vehicles in our military. It is this very drone that the Russians have nicknamed Baba Yaga because of its piercing voice.
They hear and shout Baba Yaga, and they are scared. And it's not for nothing.
They are not afraid for nothing, say the soldiers, because just one such drone destroyed several Russian positions overnight, and it constantly wrecks their equipment and mines the territory in front of our positions, so that enemy vehicles and infantry are blown to pieces if they attempt an assault.
We dropped a lot of ammunition on the positions, on the houses that were once civilian but are now occupied by the Russians. We dropped a lot of ammunition there, and this makes the job easier for the infantrymen who are stationed nearby.
The specific task of these pilots is night raids, to burn everything that might even slightly resemble Russian shelters, so that if the occupiers do decide to launch an assault, they won't be able to find a place to hide. And then the FPV drone pilots can easily eliminate them. Even though the guys were on duty the previous night, they are not sleeping now. They are preparing their copter for another night mission. We have a career and we will hang on. In fact, over the 3 years of full-scale war, the Russians have been completely unable to replicate such a hexacopter. It is only with us. Vampire not only performs combat tasks such as dropping munitions into Russian trenches to destroy them, but also delivers humanitarian cargo, which is extremely important. That is, it delivers munitions and provisions to the trenches, where our soldiers cannot reach daily. In this way, Bau, it also saves their lives. Such a team of pilots is rarely found in the Ukrainian military, and that's because they communicate with each other in 2 languages. I am from Ukraine, currently in Chicago, USA, in Ukraine. Kim is from the United States and at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, volunteered for Ukraine. And Mac is British. Even before 2022, he lived in Odessa for a long time and had every opportunity to go home, but he stayed to join the army because he loves his Ukrainian wife and is here for her.
I love Ukraine, and I don't want to live in Britain anymore. I want to live here.
And I also greatly respect Ukrainian cuisine. A big borscht, right? They are finishing equipping the Vampire. Mac needs to check the mounts on it because tonight it has to carry explosive FABs, weighing 8 kilograms each. It's gone. By the way, these munitions are of Ukrainian production and work very well against Russian shelters. Just what is needed on the Pokrovsky direction, says Rambo, and prepares special revenge FABs for the drops. For Kryvyi Rih, says the warrior. This is the native city of the paratrooper, where his wife and son are waiting for him.
My wife heard the explosions. Children died. We will take revenge. We'll sign and let them receive these gifts. These explosives will fly to the basements where the gatherings of bastards are located. It's completely unfair for them to have such weapons as they do. And we don't have such weapons, so we have to fight with what we know. But we are very good at it. Where the 25th Brigade stands, they will not pass. That's for sure. I can confidently state that to you.
Yulia Krienko, Alexander Shian, Oleg Mostovyi, TSN 1+1 Marathon United News.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine today. Join us now.
The enemy's equipment shatters into pieces. Precise work by our drone operators and more. Intelligence and artillery are right there. They work in harmony. Fresh videos straight from the front are already being discussed all over Ukraine. Will Putin back down after such disgrace? Find out in our report right now.
The orcs are advancing on the Dnipro. The enemy is trying to reach the administrative border of the Dnipropetrovsk region. Because of this, it's hell on the Pokrovsky direction right now. The lack of prospects in operational and tactical terms does not stop the enemy. They stubbornly try to break through the defense of our troops in this direction and reach the administrative border of the Dnipropetrovsk region. To this end, the Russian command daily sends new units into battle, drives its soldiers to death, and reports on illusory successes and victories, reports Commander-in-Chief Syrsky. Also on April 9th, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Oleksandr Syrsky, noted that one of the objectives of the military exercises West 2025 in Belarus, Tuldu, in which the Russian armed forces will also participate, could be the covert formation of offensive troop groups that might attack Kyiv, repeating the scenario of the year 22. In 6 months, the anti-aircraft gunners of the 3rd Assault Unit shot down 220 and hit 28 enemy UAVs. The brigade once again took first place for the number of drones destroyed in the electronic points, ranking among all line brigades of the ground forces of the armed forces of Ukraine. The fighters also became record holders for shooting down small-sized targets, bow and leaders in eliminating Lancet loitering munitions. This includes 40 reconnaissance Zala, 29 Supercam and Scat, 12 Orlan and 1 Rare Marlin. Also 17 Lancet loitering munitions, including the modern modification Product 55 and 2 Molnia, up to 150 small-sized UAVs, for the downing of which the highest skill is required. The total number of targets is 349. intercepted by our UAVs, shot down by air defense systems with small arms. All of this is the anti-aircraft missile and artillery division of the 3rd Assault. Each fatality for Russian drone operators in this video. And at this time, explosions underfoot, ammunition detonation, enemy infantry and vehicles were blown into the air. These are shots of the precise work of the FPV of the 3rd Assault, targeting Andiaditi Tariki identified enemy targets. They dismantled the enemy's manpower and an entire fleet, vans, trucks, APCs and a tank. They hit a car filled with occupiers who fled in panic in all directions, and the ammunition, which burned everything around with a shockwave. Precise and swift strikes on the enemy with no chance to escape or hide. The work of the unit's fighters. HIMARS is pure detonation. The warriors of the Bouwa in the Magura Brigade discovered an enemy gun and instantly organized a true symphony of destruction. What does true combat harmony look like? It looks exactly like this. The pilots of the unmanned aerial reconnaissance of the 47th Separate Mechanized Brigade launched the Fury into the sky, and it clearly captured the enemy's D-30 howitzer camouflaged in the forest strip. The camouflage did not save them. The coordinates were promptly relayed to the artillerymen. Then everything went like clockwork. A few quick calculations, targeting, and a powerful HIMARS strike. The hit was precise, the detonation complete, the howitzer disappears along with its crew. This example is yet another testament to the effective interaction between intelligence and artillery. Each unit works in harmony, complementing the other. It is this synergy that allows for the rapid detection, transmission of targets, and destruction of the enemy before they can even fire a shot. Bulk deliveries of the Rashists to Kobzon's concert, performed by the UAV operators of the Assault Regiment Luhansk of the National Police Brigade, LUT. While the enemy unsuccessfully tries to advance and assault Ukrainian positions, our drones methodically carry out their mission of goodwill, sending the next batches of occupiers to an unforgettable performance by Master Kobzon. The operators of the strike UAVs of the Luhansk Regiment work professionally, coolly, and with jeweler-like precision. One successful sortie and the equipment is hit, the personnel is neutralized, the fortification is destroyed. Their target is not just equipment, but any enemy concentration that dares to approach our positions. The drones of the Luhansk Regiment are not just eyes in the sky, they are retribution from above. FPV strikes, pinpoint drops, bombs on positions. And another dozen of Putin's men are sent off to a concert with no return ticket. And while the Russian command throws new and new reserves into battle, Ukrainian forces continue to economically, precisely, and with inspiration, reduce the lists of enemy formations. The work continues. Tickets are already printed. This entire vibrant weekly chronicle is as bright as the flames of enemy ammunition depots after the strikes by Kartya drones. In recent days, the operators of the Kartya unit strike UAVs have been destroying everything the enemy tried to hide. Ammunition depots ignited like festive fireworks. The fiery flashes were a clear signal. The Ukrainian sky is under our control. Enemy mortar crews, artillery positions, and at least 3 pieces of equipment couldn't withstand either. Each sortie is a minus for the enemy and a plus for our victory. Kartya continues to operate precisely, swiftly, and ruthlessly. And while the Russians try to hide in forests, groves, or behind concrete shelters, their personal gift is already flying from above. As for the situation on the front is under control. The enemy assaults, but without success. The greatest effectiveness has been recorded in the Kursk direction, 25 attacks, 8 airstrikes, over 250 shellings. Despite the scale there is no success. The heaviest fighting remains in the Pokrovsky direction. There our defenders have halted 75 offensive actions by the aggressor as of 30/04. The enemy attempted to advance on Staromykolaivka and Tarasivka. There the occupier is trying to break through and cut off the logistics of the armed forces. In the Lyman direction there were 21 attacks, and in the Kramatorsk direction 13, but none resulted in advances. In Kharkiv region, Kupiansk, Siversk, Toretsk and Novopavlivka, intense fighting is ongoing. However, Ukrainian forces are consistently holding the defense and thwarting enemy plans. In the Hulyapol, Orikhiv, Volyn and Polisia directions, there is calm. Despite the pressure, the armed forces of Ukraine maintain the initiative, destroy equipment and manpower, and systematically reduce the offensive potential of the Russian Federation. That's all for today. Watch the next news tomorrow.
Shock. Putin's army has hit a new low. The Kremlin seems to be recruiting an army through ads in the tropics. The Russian world, African style. The whole truth about the valiant liberators has come to light. The dictator has started recruiting soldiers from yet another place. The empire is cracking. Find out what is known about this in our upcoming report.
Fighters of the Carpathian Sich Battalion captured a Senegalese man who was fighting on the side of the Russian army. According to the mercenary, he studied for 2 years at a Russian university and then decided to move from Russia to Europe by the shortest route, through the Frontline.
During the examination of the prisoner, Russian bank cards were found, and according to him, he was like an emigrant wanting to emigrate further abroad to Germany. He was told to go to the line of combat engagement, earn money, and then he would, well, move further as if to earn money. I want to go from Russia to Europe because he says it's not difficult.
Russians are burying foreign mercenaries by the thousands in Ukrainian black soil. Investigative journalists, thanks to social networks and data leaks, are constantly identifying more and more Kremlin defenders. The publication Important Stories has uncovered the names of 1,500 people from 48 countries around the world. The media obtained access to the data of the Unified Medical Information Analytical System. In it, 1,500 people are registered at the same residential address, which coincides with the location of the sole contract recruitment point. This is the number of recruits from the end of April 2023 to May 2024. The leaders were the Nepalese. However, after their participation in the war began to be confirmed in the media, the authorities stopped issuing tourist visas to Russia and their influx decreased. The largest source of mercenaries after Nepal is the post-Soviet Maoist countries.
Kirilo Stremusov, through just one recruitment point on Yabluchkova, Idisom, Yerbutva, at least 523 people from post-Soviet states have passed in a little over a year. The majority are from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Belarus, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. Some flew to Russia from their home countries on the same day or a day before appearing at the recruitment point. However, most of those for whom border crossing data is available have lived in Russia for more than a month and often more than a year.
Narrator. Currently, there are several scandals in Kazakhstan surrounding the recruitment of the country's citizens for the war in Ukraine. Firstly, local activists have noted how the Russian propaganda channel Sputnik openly advertises recruitment for participation in the war within the ranks of the Russian army. Secondly, Kazakhs have received a list of 600 names of the country's citizens who are mercenaries. The local authorities, who had previously shown neutrality, became anxious.
Kazakh Voice. We do not know the accuracy of these numbers, how much they correspond to reality. We need to look into this now and verify this information.
Kazakh Voice. And last year, example, how many people were prosecuted for mercenary activities? Kazakh Voice make an official request.
Viktor Sivov. All 661 names that are there, they are accurate. Why can I assert this quite clearly? Firstly, in this list, we found the names of all the West Kazakhstan residents that we wrote about, or that I personally wrote about on social media, starting from February 2022. These are the residents of the West Kazakhstan region who went to fight on the side of Russia, the so-called mercenaries. In particular, in this list, you can find the names of Aybek Ramazanov and Batir Yermekbayev, residents of the West Kazakhstan region who are now deceased, and they are dead. In the same list, there is a person named Alexander Gaponov, who is still alive and continues to fight in Ukraine, as far as I know. Besides everything else, apart from finding the names of West Kazakhstan residents that we already know, several women from Kazakhstan contacted me personally after the list was published. These are the mothers, wives, and sisters of those men who left Kazakhstan to fight for Russia against Ukraine, and accordingly, those missing in action.
Narrator. In fact, there are many more such Kazakh mercenaries. In the Russian army, they have to endure violence and humiliation, and of course participate in the meat grinder assaults.
Alexander Gaponov. People from the near abroad are subjected to the most horrific torture and violence, and then, let's say, due to their broken psyche, they simply cannot find any way out other than to go on this assault. People at the front now, regardless of who they are, live up to 2 months. A month, 2 weeks, a week and a half, and it doesn't matter who they are, convicts, contract soldiers, or immigrants who are forcibly, let's say, driven into this war. The list I publish, I Want to Live, includes more than 800 people But we understand that if people have been reaching out daily since the beginning of this year, searching for various individuals, then we realize that this number has long surpassed 1,000 people. Mainly, from what I communicate and hear from your side, these are people from northern Kazakhstan.
Announcer, officially, there are currently 7 Kazakh mercenary prisoners of war in Ukrainian captivity. But they can only be exchanged to Russia, which does not want them. The prisoners do not want to return to their homeland.
Viktor Sivov. None of them want to return to Kazakhstan. It's understandable, because according to Kazakh laws, specifically the Criminal Code of the Republic of Kazakhstan, there are 2 articles in the Criminal Code that provide punishment for going to fight in Ukraine. There is the article mercenarism and the article participation in foreign armed conflicts. According to these 2 articles, which are considered serious offenses, the punishment terms are quite severe, ranging from 9 years to up to 17 years of imprisonment. Therefore, it's not surprising that all these mercenaries with Kazakh passports who fought for Russia and were captured do not want to return to Kazakhstan. There's nothing surprising about that. And it's also not surprising that they want to return to Russia. I don't know how much they want to go back to war, but they definitely want to obtain Russian citizenship.
Narrator, this mercenary from Kyrgyzstan also fled to Russia for the promised citizenship. He fought for half a year, but when he returned home, he was detained. The court sentenced him to 10 years in a penal colony with a 3-year suspension. The mercenary fled to Russia.
Mercenary, I had no problems crossing the border because they asked where I was heading. I said I was going to Kazakhstan for gasoline.
Narrator, Kyrgyzstan is one of the top countries from which people go to fight in the ranks of the Russian Tsar Army. After Russian security forces brutally mistreated migrants in a bathhouse, the local authorities finally noticed and blocked the recruitment channel. It turned out to be the Russian house. The Kyrgyz detained the Russian woman Natalia Sekharina until mid-June. She represented Rosotrudnichestvo in Ukraine. Along with her, a city hall employee from Osh ended up in the detention center. They are accused of recruiting mercenaries for the war in Ukraine, on the side of Russia. The names of 2 other detainees have not been disclosed. The problem for mercenaries from neighboring countries is also that by being tempted by a Russian passport, they automatically become citizens of the Russian Federation for Russians, with corresponding obligations. And all other countries associated with Russia through partnership agreements must essentially extradite their own citizens to the Russian Federation. There are many such requests concerning military personnel who have returned to their historical homelands.
My daughter is a citizen of Kyrgyzstan. She grew up in Kyrgyzstan. I don't want to give her to Russia. I don't want to send her to war.
Narrator, but all these tears of mothers and the bullying by commanders, of course, do not make it to the federal channels. The propaganda machine continues to churn out videos about the great Putin, the father of all nations.
Nazar Papa Vladimir Putin Kamtayat. Roman, this is Papa Vladimir Putin. He must be respected, and everyone in the world respects him. I would dream of seeing him and shaking his hand, or at least raising my hand to greet him. I'm very proud of him.
Darina Gutsalo, that's all from me. I was with you, Darina Gutsalo. Even more hellish news from the front in our next issue. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and like. See you.